Did you know that thousands of elderly people die in complete loneliness each year? Not because they have no family, but because of something far more dangerous and silent? Picture this: a quiet hospital room, the slow beep of machines, and no one sitting by your side. Not because your loved one stopped caring, but because something inside you slowly pushed them away without you even realizing it. It sounds harsh, maybe even unbelievable, but it's happening all around us, and it could happen to you too. The truth is, most seniors who die alone weren't abandoned. They were disconnected. And worse, many of them thought they were doing everything right. They stayed polite, quiet, low maintenance, thinking that would help them stay connected, but instead it created an invisible wall. If you've ever told yourself, "I don't want to bother anyone," or "they'll call if they care," you may already be making the same mistake. In this video, we're going to uncover the one hidden habit that drives people away from you emotionally, even if they're physically close. This single behavior is so common that almost every senior does it without realizing the damage it causes. But here's the most important part: there's a way to reverse it, to rebuild deep, meaningful connection, and to make sure you never face your final years alone. And no, it's not about making more friends or calling your kids more often. It's something far deeper, and I'll reveal it in just a moment. But first, you need to understand what's really at stake. Most people assume that loneliness in old age comes from not having enough people around. Family members move away, friends pass on, and the social circle shrinks. But the real danger isn't the number of people in your life. It's the quality of connection you have with them. You could be surrounded by children, neighbors, and nurses, and still feel completely invisible. That's because emotional connection, not physical presence, is what keeps people close to you when it matters most. A shocking study by the National Institute on Aging found that 43% of seniors regularly feel lonely, even when they live with family or receive frequent visits. That means nearly half of older adults are emotionally alone, even in a full house. And here's what makes it worse: most seniors don't recognize it. They say things like, "I'm fine," or "I don't need much," thinking they're being strong and independent. But those exact phrases are what create distance. People start assuming you don't want company. You don't need conversation. You don't want to open up. Without realizing it, you become emotionally invisible. And here's the terrifying part: once that pattern sets in, it becomes harder and harder to break. Relationships fade, people stop reaching out, and the silence grows. It doesn't happen overnight, it builds slowly. One quiet conversation at a time, one unanswered message at a time, until suddenly the only sound left is the echo of your own thoughts. If you've ever wondered why people stop calling, or why visits feel shorter and more distracted, this could be the reason. It's not about them forgetting you. It's about them not feeling invited in. And that misunderstanding is destroying thousands of precious relationships every year. The saddest part? Most people only realize it when it's already too late. But here's the good news: there's still time to fix it. There's one simple shift that can reopen emotional doors and rebuild trust with the people who matter most. If this message is striking a nerve, comment 9 below to let me know you're still watching. Your story might be more common than you think. So, what is this hidden habit that drives people away, even when they care about you deeply? It's emotional withdrawal, the quiet decision to stop sharing, to stop expressing, to protect yourself by staying silent. It starts small. Maybe you stop mentioning your aches and pains because you don't want to sound like a burden. Maybe you hold back your feelings so you don't worry your children. Maybe you pretend everything is fine, even when it's not. At first, it feels like the mature thing to do, the polite choice. But over time, that silence becomes a barrier, and the people who love you the most begin to feel shut out. Emotional withdrawal sends a message you never intended, that you don't need anyone, that you're better off alone, that connection isn't important to you. And eventually, people believe it. Studies have shown that seniors who suppress their emotions are 52% more likely to experience deep chronic loneliness, even when surrounded by family. Think about that for a second. You could be doing everything right on the outside, smiling, attending family dinners, keeping yourself busy, and still feel utterly disconnected simply because you're hiding how you really feel. The truth is, people don't just connect with what you do. They connect with what you share. And when you stop sharing, the bond slowly fades. It doesn't matter how long you've known someone or how close they once were. If they stop feeling emotionally welcomed into your world, they'll eventually step back. And not because they want to, but because they don't know how to stay close anymore. And here's the most dangerous part. Emotional withdrawal becomes a habit so subtle, you don't even notice you're doing it. You might think you're protecting your loved ones, but you're actually isolating yourself. You might think you're being strong, but what they see is distance. So ask yourself, honestly, have you been letting people in, or have you quietly been closing the door? Because the longer you wait to open up, the harder it becomes to reach anyone at all. The consequences of emotional withdrawal go far beyond hurt feelings or missed conversations. They strike directly at your mental and physical health. When emotional connection fades, your body feels it just as much as your heart does. Loneliness isn't just a feeling, it's a biological stressor. Your immune system weakens, your risk of heart disease rises, your memory begins to slip faster, and your body starts to shut down, little by little. One of the most shocking studies from Brigham Young University revealed that chronic loneliness increases your risk of early death by 26%, making it more dangerous than obesity, alcohol abuse, or even smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Let that sink in. Feeling disconnected from others can be just as lethal as the worst lifestyle habits. And unlike diet or exercise, loneliness often gets ignored because it's invisible. No one can see it, and many seniors are too proud or too afraid to speak about it. But just because you hide it well doesn't mean it's not harming you. You may look fine on the outside, but inside, your body is carrying the silent weight of emotional starvation. And what's worse is that it's not just your health that suffers, it's your relationships. The longer you stay emotionally withdrawn, the more awkward and distant your connections become. People stop visiting as often because they feel uncomfortable. They don't know what to say. They sense the wall but can't break through it. Over time, even your closest relationships start to feel forced, shallow, or obligatory. And then one day, you wake up and realize the calls have stopped, the visits have slowed, and you're not sure how to bring anyone back in. That's why this isn't just a personal issue, it's a life or death one. You could be slowly cutting off your lifeline without realizing it. That's how powerful this hidden habit is. It doesn't scream or demand attention, it just quietly builds a wall between you and the rest of the world until it's too late to tear it down. But don't panic yet. There's still time to act. And the solution is simpler than you might think. One of the biggest mistakes seniors make, without even realizing it, is waiting. Waiting for someone to call first. Waiting for someone to visit. Waiting for others to notice that something feels off. There's a dangerous belief that says if they care, they'll reach out. But here's the truth. Most people don't know how to read silence. They assume you're okay. They assume you need space. They assume your quietness means peace, not pain. And so they stop trying. Not out of neglect, but out of misunderstanding. Emotional distance doesn't feel like rejection to you. It feels like protection. But to others, it often feels like a closed door. They don't want to push their way in, so they politely back away, hoping you'll open up when you're ready. The tragedy is, many seniors are left waiting, hoping, resenting, slowly fading into the background, when the people they love are just one honest conversation away. Think about how many birthdays you didn't mention because you didn't want attention, how many struggles you stayed quiet about because you didn't want to worry anyone. You thought you were doing the right thing, but you were unknowingly pushing others away. Let me ask you this. Are you waiting for someone to care enough to knock on your emotional door? Or are you brave enough to open it yourself? Because the reality is, connection doesn't happen by accident. It happens by invitation. And that invitation can be as simple as a message, a call, or a moment of honesty. Every day you wait is another day people drift further away, not because they've stopped loving you, but because they don't know if you still want them close. It's not weakness to reach out first. In fact, it might be the strongest and most life-giving thing you can do. You don't need to give a speech, you just need to be real. Say, I miss you. Say, I've been feeling a little lonely. Say, let's talk. That small act can change everything. So, how do you rebuild the emotional bridge before it's too late? It starts with a simple, powerful shift. Stop waiting for connection and start creating it. You don't need to force deep conversations or spill your soul all at once. You just need to make room for realness. Start by being honest about how you feel, even if it's uncomfortable. Say, I've been thinking a lot lately, or I miss hearing your voice. These small truths open doors that have been closed for years. And here's the secret. People want to be close to you. They just need a sign that you still want them close too. Don't underestimate how far a 5-minute call or a handwritten note can go. When you reach out with sincerity, not guilt or pressure, you're giving others permission to connect again. One emotional check-in a week can change your life. Schedule it like you would a doctor's appointment. Make it just as important, because it is. Studies from Harvard have shown that the quality of your relationships in later life is a stronger predictor of health and happiness than genetics, income, or even diet. That means what you say and who you say it to literally impacts how long and how well you live. You don't need a dozen people. You need one or two that you can be fully yourself with. Maybe it's a child, a friend, a neighbor, or even someone from your past. The key is to start now. Don't wait for a special reason. Connection doesn't need a holiday or crisis. It needs intention. Think of it like watering a plant you thought was already dead. A little care can bring surprising life back to something that seemed lost. Reaching out isn't admitting weakness. It's practicing strength, clarity, and hope. And in this stage of life, nothing is more powerful than choosing to reconnect before silence becomes permanent. There's something truly powerful that happens when you stop hiding behind politeness and start allowing real connection into your life again. You begin to feel seen, not just as someone's grandparent, neighbor, or patient, but as a whole person with thoughts, feelings, and a life worth sharing. This isn't about forcing people to pay attention to you. It's about becoming emotionally available so that the people who already care can finally reach you again. And here's the beautiful part: when you open up, the right people respond. Real connection doesn't require effort from everyone, just consistency from a few. You don't need a crowd. You need a few people who truly see you and value your presence. Think about Helen, an 81-year-old woman who spent years thinking she didn't matter anymore. She stayed quiet during family calls, smiled politely at social gatherings, but always left feeling emptier than before. One day, she decided to change that. She sent her daughter a voice message, not asking for help, but simply sharing how she felt. I miss talking to you. I feel like we only talk about what's needed, not what matters. That message opened a door. Her daughter called back in tears, saying she'd always felt that distance but didn't know how to fix it. From that day on, their relationship changed. They started having weekly chats, not out of duty, but out of love. Helen didn't just reconnect with her daughter, she reconnected with life. That's what emotional openness gives you, a chance to rebuild what matters most. It gives you energy, clarity, and something to look forward to. And maybe even more importantly, it gives the people who love you permission to love you fully. It takes courage to be emotionally honest, especially after years of silence. But courage doesn't mean loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's as quiet as saying, "I miss being close," or "Can we talk more?" Those words have more healing power than any medicine. And when you stop pretending everything is fine and start sharing your truth, you give others the chance to show up, not just physically, but emotionally. If you've been feeling like no one really sees you anymore, maybe it's not because they stopped looking. Maybe it's because you stopped letting them in. But that can change starting today. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you knows this message matters. Maybe you felt the silence creeping in. Maybe you've noticed the calls getting shorter, the visits less frequent, the smiles more distant. And maybe, just maybe, you've been afraid to admit that what you really want isn't more people, but deeper connection with the ones who already matter. So here's your wake-up call. Don't wait. Don't wait for another missed birthday, another unanswered message, another lonely Sunday. Because every day you wait, the emotional gap grows wider, the habits get stronger, the silence gets heavier, but it's not too late. You have the power to turn it around. One conversation, one honest moment, one invitation to reconnect. That's all it takes to begin. Remember this. The people who care about you may be waiting too. Waiting for a signal that you still want closeness, that you still want to be seen. They're not ignoring you. They're uncertain. And your courage can be the key that brings them back. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It just has to be real. Start with one person. Reach out and say, "I miss our talks," or "I'd love to hear your voice this week." That's enough to open the door. And once that door opens, something amazing happens. You stop feeling like you're disappearing. You start feeling alive again. Because emotional connection isn't a luxury, it's a lifeline. It keeps your spirit strong, your mind sharp, and your heart full. You don't need to fight for attention. You just need to show up with honesty. And if you do, the right people will meet you halfway. So here's what I want you to do. Before the day ends, reach out to one person. Don't overthink it. Don't make it perfect. Just be present. Say something real. And if this video spoke to you, if something deep in your heart is stirring right now, then let us know. Leave a comment below and share your truth. You can simply type 9 if that's all you have the words for. Because when we speak up, we remind each other that we're not alone. And that reminder, simple as it is, could be the beginning of a life you no longer have to face in silence.